It's week 18 of the NFL season, and here are my predictions for this week. But first, how did I do last week? In week 17 in wins and losses, I went 7-9, and against the spread, I went 5-11, and that's by far my worst week of the season. But before getting into the video, I want to say Happy New Year to everybody watching, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. Kicking off the week on Saturday, we have the 8-8 Panthers versus the 7-9 Buccaneers, and the winner of this game will most likely win the NFC South. With the Panthers win, they win their division, but if the Buccaneers win, there's still a chance the Panthers get in, since the Falcons won on Monday Night Football against the Rams. With a Falcons win, there would be a three-way tie, so the Panthers would get in over the Buccaneers because of the three-way tie. But the Panthers are coming off a 27-10 loss against the Seahawks, and Bryce Young went 14 of 24 with 54 yards and an interception. Then he had 27 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Then Rico Dowdle led the team with 59 yards rushing, and their leading receiver was Jalen Coker with 2 receptions and 16 yards. But on defense, they had 3 sacks and an interception. Then for the Buccaneers, they're coming off a 20-17 loss against the Dolphins, and Baker Mayfield went 33 of 44, 346 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Then their leading rusher was Bucky Irving with 19 yards, and Jalen McMillan had 7 receptions and 114 yards. And after that game, the Buccaneers have now lost 7 out of their last 9 games, and I don't think anyone expected them to be 2 games under 500 after starting the season 5-1. But they still have a chance at the playoffs and winning their division. But their left tackle Tristan Wirfs is still questionable this week. But this season, the Panthers haven't lost back-to-back games since week 1 and 2, and they're coming off a loss. They played each other just 2 weeks ago in week 16, and the Panthers won that game 23-20, and I have the Panthers winning again. Then the 13-3 Seahawks versus the 12-4 49ers. In the Seahawks win over the Panthers, Sam Darnold went 18 of 27, 147 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Zach Charbonnet had 110 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and Jackson Smith-Njigba had 9 receptions and 72 yards. Then the 49ers are coming off a 42-38 win against the Bears on Sunday Night Football, and this was a very good high-scoring game, and it was back and forth all the way through. And this was the first regular season game in NFL history to be tied at each 7, 14, 21, 28, and 35. That happened one other time in the playoffs. So yeah, every time the 49ers scored, the Bears answered right back. And the Bears even took the lead with a field goal with 5:22 left in the fourth quarter. But Brock Purdy hit Juwan Jennings for a 38-yard touchdown to take the lead. And the Bears had a chance to walk off this game. They had the ball at San Francisco's 2-yard line with 4 seconds left in the game. But it ended up being an incomplete pass, and that was the game. But Brock Purdy went 24 of 33, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. And he also had 2 rushing touchdowns. Then Christian McCaffrey had 140 rushing yards and a touchdown, and 4 receptions and 41 yards. Then Ricky Pearsall led the team with 5 receptions and 85 yards. And this is another really good game on Saturday, and the winner of this game will win the NFC West. And the last time they played each other was back in week 1, where the 49ers won 17-13. But a lot has changed since week 1, but both teams have been great all year long, and they've both won 6 games in a row. But the Seahawks have been great on the road this season at 7-1, and I have the Seahawks winning and covering the 1.5 point spread. Then moving over to Sunday, we have the 4-12 Browns versus the 6-10 Bengals. The Browns are coming off a 13-6 win over the Steelers, and Shedeur Sanders went 17 of 23, 186 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Then Dylan Sampson led the team with 27 rushing yards, and Jerry Jeudy had 5 receptions and 54 yards. And on defense, Myles Garrett did not get a sack, so he still needs 1 more to get the single season record. Then the Bengals are coming off a 37-14 win over the Cardinals, and Joe Burrow went 24 of 31, 305 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Chase Brown had 101 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, and Jamar Chase led the team with 7 receptions, 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. And on defense, they had 4 sacks, while also holding the Cardinals to just 233 yards. This should be a good game, even though both teams are fully eliminated from playoffs, and overall it's a pretty meaningless game, but the Browns and Bengals always play each other very close, and they played each other back in week 1, and the Bengals won by 1 point, 17-16, but the Browns are coming off a big win, and as a Browns fan, I was a little disappointed they won just because it screws up their draft position, but it was still a good win, and the team hasn't given up this season, and I have the Browns winning. Then the 8-8 Colts versus the 11-5 Texans. The Colts are coming off a 23-17 loss against the Jaguars. Phillip Rivers went 17 of 30, 147 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Then Jonathan Taylor had 70 yards rushing and a touchdown, and Tyler Warren had 5 receptions and 43 yards. Then the Texans are coming off a 20-16 win over the Chargers, and CJ Stroud went 16 of 28, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Then Woody Marks had 71 yards rushing, and Jaden Higgins had 2 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown, and that touchdown was for 75 yards. And on defense, they had 5 sacks and an interception. And with that win, the Texans did clinch the playoffs, but they still have a chance at winning the AFC South. Then the Colts are going to start their rookie quarterback Riley Leonard this week, and it's going to be very good for him to get some live game reps. So I still have the Texans winning, but I have the Colts covering the 10-point spread. Then we have the 7-8-1 Cowboys versus the 3-13 Giants. The Cowboys are coming off a 30-23 win over the Commanders on Christmas Day, and Dak Prescott went 19 of 37, 307 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Malik Davis had 103 yards rushing, and Kevontae Turpin led the team with 1 reception, 86 yards and a touchdown. Then the Giants are coming off a 34-10 win over the Raiders, and Jackson Dart played very well, going 22 of 30, 207 yards, while also running for 48 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Then Tyrone Tracy led the team with 62 yards rushing, and Wan'Dale Robinson had 11 receptions and 113 yards, and he's now at over 1,000 yards on the season. And their defense played very good with 4 sacks and 2 interceptions, and 1.5 of those sacks went to Brian Burns, and he's now up to 16.5 on the season. So I have the Cowboys winning and covering the 5.5 point spread. Then the 6-10 Saints versus the 7-9 Falcons. And the Saints are coming off a 34-26 win over the Titans. And Tyler Shuck had another great game, going 22 of 27, 333 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Audric Estime had 94 yards rushing and a touchdown. And Chris Olave had 8 receptions, 119 yards and a touchdown. And on defense, they had 4 sacks. And so far for Tyler Shuck, he's been great. In his 8 starts, he's gone 5-3 with 2,100 yards, 9 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, while also having 150 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So it looks like the Saints found their quarterback. Then the Falcons are coming off a 27-24 win over the Rams. And Kirk Cousins went 13 of 20 with 126 yards and a touchdown. Then Bijan Robinson had a massive game with 195 yards rushing and a touchdown. And that touchdown was for 93 yards. And he also had 5 receptions, 34 yards and a touchdown. Then David Sills led the team with 3 receptions and 37 yards. And on defense, they had 3 sacks and 3 interceptions. Lately, both of these teams are playing good. The Saints have now won 4 games in a row, while the Falcons have won 3 games in a row. But with the way Tyler Shuck has been playing, I have the Saints winning. Then the 9-6-1 Packers versus the 8-8 Vikings. The Packers are coming off a 41-24 loss against the Ravens. And Malik Willis had a great game, going 18 of 21 with 288 yards and a touchdown, while also leading the team with 60 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. But when they were down by just 10 in the 4th quarter and driving down the field, Malik Willis re-aggravated his shoulder injury, and he had to come out of the game, and they put in Clayton Tune, and on his first pass, he ended up throwing an interception, and that killed all their chances of coming back and winning. But they're still in the playoffs, and they've clinched the number 7 seed, and they are most likely going to sit most of their starters, and especially Jordan Love. But also in that game, Christian Watson led the team with 5 receptions, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Then the Vikings are coming off an upset win, 23-10 over the Lions on Christmas Day, and that win eliminated the Lions from the playoffs. And Max Brosmer went 9 of 16 and 51 yards. And Jordan Addison led the team with just one carry for 65 yards. That was a touchdown. Then Justin Jefferson had 4 receptions and 30 yards. And going into this game, he still needs 53 receiving yards to get to 1,000 on the season, which would put him at his first 6 seasons of having 1,000 yards. And also on the Vikings defense, they had 5 sacks and 2 interceptions. But the Vikings are playing very good right now. They've won 4 games in a row, but they ended up getting hot just too late into the season. But I still have the Vikings winning and covering the 6.5 point spread. Then the 3-13 Titans versus the 12-4 Jaguars. The Titans are coming off a 34-26 loss against the Saints, and Cam Ward went 21 of 40, 251 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Tony Pollard had 85 yards rushing, and he now has 1,000 rushing yards on the season, and that's his 4th straight season with 1,000 yards. Then Chigakonkwo led the team with 3 receptions, 55 yards and a touchdown. Then in the Jaguars win over the Colts, Trevor Lawrence went 23 of 37, 263 yards and an interception, while also having 2 rushing touchdowns. Then Travis Etienne led the team with 76 yards rushing, and Parker Washington had 8 receptions and 115 yards. And now Liam Cohen is the first head coach in NFL history to take over a team that won 4 or less games in the year prior and win 12 games in his first season. But the Jaguars still have a lot to play for in this game. If they win the game, they win their division, and if they lose, they still can win their division, but they would need the Texans to lose. So I have the Jaguars winning and covering the 12.5 point spread. Then the 3-13 Cardinals versus the 11-5 Rams. In the Cardinals' loss against the Bengals, Jacoby Brissett went 21 of 37, 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Michael Carter had 29 yards rushing, and Michael Wilson had 5 receptions, 89 yards and a touchdown. Then in the Rams' loss against the Falcons, Matt Stafford went 22 of 38, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Then Kyron Williams had 92 yards rushing, and Xavier Smith had 4 receptions and 67 yards. Even with the Rams now losing 2 games in a row, they're still a very good team, and I have the Rams winning and covering the 7.5 point spread. Then the 11-5 Chargers versus the 13-3 Broncos. In the Chargers' loss against the Texans, Justin Herbert went 21 of 32, 236 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and he was sacked 5 times, but he also led the team with 37 yards rushing. Then Quentin Johnston had 5 receptions and 98 yards. Then for the Broncos, they're coming off a 20-13 win over the Chiefs, and Bo Nix went 26 of 38, 182 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, while also having 42 yards rushing and a touchdown. Then RJ Harvey led the team with 43 yards rushing, and Cortland Sutton had 4 receptions and 40 yards. But this week, the Chargers are going to be resting most of their starters, including Justin Herbert, so it's going to be Trey Lance starting for them. And I'm actually very excited to see how Trey Lance performs in this game, and I still think he could be a pretty good NFL player, and he's only started 5 games in his career. And this is going to be a good test for him because the Broncos are still playing for the number 1 seed in the AFC. So I have the Broncos winning, but I have the Chargers covering the 12.5 point spread. Then the 6-10 Chiefs versus the 2-14 Raiders. In the Chiefs' loss against the Broncos, Chris Oladokun went 13 of 22, 66 yards and a touchdown. Then Kareem Hunt led the team with 38 yards rushing, and Travis Kelce had 5 receptions and 36 yards. And this could potentially be Travis Kelce's last career game if he decides to retire, which I personally think he would retire. Then for the Raiders, in their loss against the Giants, Geno Smith went 20 of 28, 176 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Then Ashton Genty had 60 yards rushing, and Michael Mayer had 9 receptions and 89 yards. And the Raiders are clearly tanking these last few games of the season, and they're not even trying to hide it. Before last week's game, they put Brock Bowers on the IR, and then they said they were going to sit Max Crosby, and he got very mad and stormed out of the building. Then they proceeded to put him on IR and said he's going to get a knee surgery. So it seems like the coaching staff is going to do all they can to not win this game. So I have the Chiefs winning, and I have them covering the 5.5 point spread. Then the 7-9 Dolphins versus the 13-3 Patriots. In the Dolphins win over the Buccaneers, Quinn Ewers went 14 of 22, 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Devon Achane had 83 yards rushing, and Theo Weiss Jr. had 1 reception, 63 yards and a touchdown. And on defense, they had 3 sacks and 2 interceptions. Then the Patriots are coming off a 42-10 win over the Jets, and Drake May was dominant in this game, going 19 of 21, 256 yards and 5 touchdowns. Then Travion Henderson led the team with 82 yards rushing, and Stephon Diggs had 6 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. And the Patriots still need to win this game to have a chance at the number 1 seed in the AFC. So I have the Patriots winning and covering the 11.5 point spread. Then the 4-12 Commanders versus the 11-5 Eagles. In the Commanders' loss against Cowboys, Josh Johnson went 15 of 23 and 198 yards. Then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had 105 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And Deebo Samuel had 2 receptions and 68 yards. And on defense, they had 6 sacks. Then the Eagles are coming off a 13-12 win over the Bills. And Jalen Hurts went 13 of 27, 110 yards and a touchdown. Then Saquon Barkley had 68 yards rushing, and A.J. Brown had 5 receptions and 68 yards. And on defense, they had 5 sacks. And the Eagles are expected to sit all their starters this week, so it's going to be Tanner McKee, and even with him, he's a great backup, so I have the Eagles winning and covering the 7-point spread. Then the 8-8 Lions versus the 11-5 Bears. In the Lions' loss against the Vikings, Jared Goff went 18 of 29, 197 yards, a touchdown and 2 interceptions, and he was sacked 5 times. Then Jahmyr Gibbs had 41 yards rushing, and Amon-Ra St. Brown had 8 receptions and 68 yards. And on defense, they had 7 sacks. Then in the Bears' loss against the 49ers, Caleb Williams went 25 of 42, 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then DeAndre Swift had 54 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And Luther Burden had 8 receptions, 138 yards and a touchdown. So entering this game, the Lions are officially eliminated for the playoffs, and the Bears have officially won the NFC North. They are still playing for the number 2 seed in the NFC, which they currently hold. And I do have the Bears winning and covering the 2.5 point spread. Then we have the 3-13 Jets versus the 11-5 Bills. In the Jets' loss against the Patriots, Brady Cook went 19 of 33, 152 yards and an interception, and he's really struggled so far, having just 1 passing touchdown to 7 interceptions. But Breece Hall had a very good game with 111 rushing yards and a touchdown, and John Mechie III had 3 receptions and 41 yards. Then in the Bills' loss against the Eagles, Josh Allen went 23 of 35 and 262 yards, while also having 2 rushing touchdowns. Then James Cook had 74 rushing yards, and Brandon Cooks had 4 receptions and 101 yards. This week, Josh Allen is going to start, but he's most likely only going to be in for 1 play, so he can keep his streak alive of consecutive starts, which is currently at 126 games. So with that, I have the Jets winning. Then finally, on Sunday Night Football, we have the 8-8 Ravens versus the 9-7 Steelers. In the Ravens' win over the Packers, Tyler Huntley went 16 of 20, 107 yards and a touchdown. Then Derrick Henry had a massive game with 216 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. And he had a career-high 36 rushing attempts in that game. And he now has the most career 200-yard rushing games in NFL history with 7. Then Zay Flowers led the team with 4 receptions, 30 yards and a touchdown. Then for the Steelers, in their loss against the Browns, Aaron Rodgers went 21 of 39 with 168 yards. Then Jaylen Warren had 64 yards rushing, and Pat Freiermuth had 3 receptions and 63 yards. And on defense, they had 2 sacks and 2 interceptions. But in that Steelers game versus the Browns, it looked like they didn't care if they won at all. It seemed like the only thing they wanted was Myles Garrett to not get the single season sack record. But they're once again going to be without DK Metcalf due to his suspension, and TJ Watt is still questionable. But for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson is still questionable. But that's not the end of the world for the Ravens, since their only 2 wins this season against teams over 500 were with Tyler Huntley. And the Ravens still have Derrick Henry, and he's just the best running back in the NFL. So I have the Ravens winning and covering the 3.5 point spread. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye.